I don't know why it's not going live. I don't know what's happening.
All right, it just says scheduled at the top.
Well, I clicked go live, but it's just like spinning.
Right. There you go. It seems like we are live. Sorry, we had some technical issues there. Welcome to today's episode of Pivot Ready Live with Bergflow. I'm Wesley, Head of Services on the Bergflow side. For those who haven't listened to our episodes and conversations over the last couple of weeks, we're truly passionate about talking about service-based companies, what the structure needs to look like, some of the key elements that's going to help you scale from 1 million to 10 million. For the last 2 weeks, we covered what actually sits under your servicing side, the transactional side. Last week, we spoke a little bit about operations. And then today, as you guys can see on the screen, we're joined by Dirk, who will be talking to us a little bit about growth, the growth mindset, the strategy going into, the market that's coming up, how the market conditions are going to change, and also what to expect from a growth leader. So, Dirk, over to you. Maybe a good place for us to start is when we talk about growth, what would you classify as the function of growth within a business?
Yeah, so going right into it, man. Well, I think, you know, a lot of people think about growth in different ways, right? One thing that we see that's very common for companies is using the word marketing in like interchangeable with growth, right? And it's interesting when kind of start talking about marketing, it was like, oh, we need to spend more on marketing. We need to market. We need to market. Like, and my thoughts always been like, what exactly does that mean? Like when you talk about marketing, and certainly, I mean, we've had our fair share of terrible experience with marketing companies where you hire them and they promise you the moon and you spend a bunch of money and it's like 4 or 5 months later you don't have any results. And so I think it's really important to really distinguish what growth is. And essentially, our very, very simple definition of growth is it's the function of getting more leads, qualifying them, and converting them. And it's that simple. Like, how am I going to generate more leads? How am I going to qualify these leads? And then how am I going to convert these leads? And then kind of the back end function of that then is how do I retain the customer or client, right? So that's kind of the for me when I think about growth, that's kind of the function of growth is it's getting more qualified leads, qualifying them, converting them, and then retaining them.
So I've been talking to a lot of business owners over the last 2-3 weeks, just around structure of their growth division. And a lot of them are leaving a lot of, meat on the table because they don't have a good structure around upselling. Because they're adopting this marketing is growth mindset. If I just market, I'm going to get more business. So for me, there's attraction, conversion, and then upselling. And I think, those are different strategies that you can employ within a growth division, but they have to be separate. You can't just say, I'm going to market myself, and then all of a sudden I'm going to have clients knocking down my door. The growth division has to be able to look after the existing clients. And also I am bringing in new clients. So marketing for me is more of a function of your growth division. So knowing that we're talking about the SOG model and the leadership profile a little bit, what would you say is the profile for somebody that's really driven to help grow a business? Where would we find somebody like that?
Well, I think it's important to define what SOG model is because I mean, if somebody's just tuning in, they don't know what that means, right? So for us, the SOG model is a very simple structure that we've developed that breaks a service company down into three distinct kind of functions, or really four functions, right? Because you have the CEO function, And then underneath the CEO sits services, operations, and growth, right? Three distinct divisions, three distinct leaders for each division.
Mm.
And the goal then, if you are a small business, or even, if you're $1 million, $3-4 million business, the number one question for you as a CEO becomes, do I have the right three people that are overseeing these distinct divisions within my company? Like, that becomes a centralized question. And each one of those positions for services, operations, and growth are really going to have, kind of like you said, very distinct functions that need to happen within their very, very distinct kind of goals and things that they're focusing on and doing, and they're very different, right? So I think the first thing you got to look at is, when it comes to growth, you're going to need the right kind of person that is a growth oriented type person. If you get somebody to kind of run growth for you and they're not internally motivated to go hunt, you're going to be in trouble, because there's a lot of people that, they're not really concerned with going out and hunting. They're just going to want to kind of do some you know functions, some work to kind of get their paycheck or whatever it is. But a truly growth oriented person, like, their satisfaction comes in from seeing the results, like from seeing the actualization of their efforts in the growth of the company, in more revenue coming in, right? More clients, more leads, more conversions. That's what they're driven by. They should be very goal focused and understand, what do I need to focus on, this quarter, this month, this week, today, to move the needle, to get more qualified leads, to get more leads converted, so that we're bringing in more revenue to the company. So I think you when you look at the right person, that's kind of their natural orientation. Like, that excites them. For them to be challenged to say, like, hey, your goal is to bring on X number of clients this month. Here's your target, whatever the case may be. Like, they're excited about that. Like, they want to go out and hunt. And then obviously, when you're looking at the leadership profile of a person like that, it's not, a lot of times, there's a lot of great salespeople out there that are terrible leaders. They're bad managers. They're bad leaders. They're really good salespeople. So what you got to be careful of is not getting somebody that's like really good at sales and terrible at leading or managing to be your leader for your sales division. You actually have to find somebody that, is really good at, the growth function, and understands the growth function, and yet also understands how to find other people, hire them, train them, equip them, hold them accountable, and help them succeed doing the same thing. And I think when I look at like the function of growth today, and bringing in more leads, converting leads, for me, there's kind of a three-pronged function of growth. Like, number one is very old school. It's called, we call prospecting or lead generation, where it really is just the function of really targeting very specific people and texting them, calling them, going by, whatever the case may be, and getting in front of them directly, one-to-one, and building a relationship. And it's just a numbers game. There's that movie, like The Pursuit of Happiness, with Will Smith, right, where he's kind of homeless, and he's got his little boy that he's taking care of, and he walks on Wall Street one time, and he sees this guy getting into the Ferrari, and he says, like, hey, what do you do? And the guy's like, oh, I'm I don't know, investment banker or financial advisor. I don't know what it was, but he goes to intern there, and he figures out, like, this is just a numbers game. They give me this really long list, and all I got to do is make enough phone calls, talk to enough people, build enough relationships, get enough conversions. And he ends up kind of being like, top of his class, and he ends up getting the job, and he becomes like wildly successful, after that. And that really is what lead generation and prospecting is. It's just being able to do that long enough and consistently enough to get the results of it. Most people don't do it because they give up after 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. They're like, this doesn't really work. They're lazy about it. They don't have a good system. They're not tracking things. They're not following up. So there's a whole system and methodology around really how to create lead generation, how to help people succeed at the highest level, how to build a sales team to do that. That's one function of it. Another function is the marketing function, right? Because it's really important today. I mean, you kind of have some of the old school marketing. I mean, there's still people that use billboards or mail things out, kind of more like physical type stuff. But really, I think one of the biggest opportunities today is digital marketing, and that is kind of something that's a massive opportunity today. But there's also just a ton of BS that goes around with digital marketing. Like, there's a ton of digital marketers out there that, like, in their head, like, theoretically they understand what to do. Like, they've been through like the ClickFunnels training or like whatever it is, and they kind of have the playbook on what to do, but they've never actually done it successfully for anybody. And then they're pitching people all the time. They're pitching businesses on like, oh, pay me $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. I'm going to build you a landing page. We're going to build a funnel. We're going to target this. And I mean, we've hired several of those people, and they just fall flat on their face. Like, so you have to be careful in what you do in that space. And it's no different than anything else, right? Just like building a really good sales team for lead generation or prospecting, it takes time. It takes working on the systems, working on the processes, bettering things over time. The same thing with digital marketing. It's going to take time. The stat that I heard is that typically if you build a really good funnel, it's usually the 17th iteration of that funnel that's going to become like $1 million plus your funnel. Meaning that, are you willing to completely build it and then revamp it 17 times? And by the way, usually it takes like 4 to 5 years to do that, even plus. So the thought of like, oh, I'm just going to build you this quick funnel, and in 3 months you're going to have more leads and you know what to do with. Like, that's like the sales pitch is like, oh, hell yeah, sign me up, because that sounds really good. Yeah. And then 3 months come down and it's like, I don't have any leads. My leads suck. I'm not converting anything. I've been paying you, 3 months now, $10,000 a month. I don't, so whatever your approach is here, like the thing that I would encourage you to think about is play the long-term game. Think about this not as like, hey, what do I need to get done in the next 90 days? But think about this as like, what do we need to start building that's going to really help us succeed and hit our goals 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And then the last function is really retention, meaning that if I do get somebody to do business with, can I get them to do business with me again? Maybe it's on a recurring model, like a monthly recurring revenue model. Maybe it's like a one and done, but like you said, maybe there's opportunities for upsell. It's like, hey, let's do this, but we can also do this and this and this, and you get recurring business from the same person. Because it's like, look, when somebody pulls out their credit card or their cash or their check or their wiring or like ACH or whatever it is, however somebody pays you, to get somebody to do that the first time is the hardest thing. Once you do that and you do a good job of taking care of them and building trust, then for them to do that the second and third and fourth, it gets easier for them every time to give you money. So that's the retention part of it. And a lot of people, are turn and burn. I remember when I used to do real estate sales, I just had no clue. Nobody ever told me that I should try to stay in touch with my past clients. And I mean, for the first 2 years that I sold real estate, it's like I'd get a lead, I would do a job, I would sell their house or whatever the case may be, and then we'd go to closing, and it was like a nice moment, and and then after that, like, I didn't talk to them again because I was like, I got to go find somebody new. And then somebody was like, dude, why don't you talk to your past clients? They can give you referrals. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd like never thought about it, and it's just like so simple, but you don't think about it. And then I started really staying in touch and calling them, and like a month after the transaction, 3 months after the transaction, and just talk to them. And I ended up getting a lot of referrals and building really good relationships by actually staying in touch with people that I had done business with, but it's amazing how many people do business with people and they never talk to them again. So that retention part is a big part of like long-term scalability. So it said lead generation and prospecting is at one side. It's the marketing and digital marketing is the second leg. And then the third leg is like really the retention and staying in touch with your clients.
So let's switch gears a little bit around the, when I talk to service-based companies, a lot of them say, well, I don't have a growth division. I have an outsourced marketing company, but most of my business is based on my relationship. People know me, my face is on the door. People know who I am. They want to deal with me. How do businesses change that image where people are actually doing business with a company, not with Dirk or Tom or Jake or whoever it is? And second part to that question is, Can we talk a little bit about the relationship from CEO to growth leader? Because I think that's a very direct, dynamic relationship, being one of the key leaders in the business. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of small businesses initially struggle with that, especially service businesses, right? It doesn't matter if you're like Frank the plumber or, Jane the realtor or whatever the case may be, right? It's somebody that, you go out, you're seeking your face, your reputation, all of that kind of stuff, especially people that name their companies after them, right? So
mm,
a lot of people do that. And then they kind of start thinking it's like, well, I have to be the one that answers the phone. I have to be the one that goes to do the work, right? So but people find out very quickly that it's just not scalable, right? I can only do so much, and that's maybe I can build a 100 or 200 or $300,000 company just kind of being me doing all the work. But at a certain level, if you want to go to 1 million plus, for most businesses, you're going to have other people that are taking care of that, right? And pretty soon, you're not going to be able to do all the sales. You're certainly not going to be able to do all the servicing, so you got to bring other people in. And then, there's some things that are less complex to do. I mean, if I'm going in and mowing yards, I mean, mowing a yard is not a very complex task. So it's probably fairly easy for me to hire somebody and teach them how to mow a yard, right? Versus, if I'm an ophthalmologist and I'm doing eye surgery and I want to scale what I'm doing, I got to go find somebody else that's highly educated that understands how to do eye surgery. I can't teach somebody that. Somebody has to go through many years of school to do that, right? And that's kind of like the spectrum here of something that's very easy to learn, where I can bring somebody
mm,
in that's like, a high school dropout and teach them how to mow a lawn. A high school dropout's not going to become an ophthalmologist, right? Because you got to have a lot of higher level education, medical school, like all kinds of stuff to be able to do that. So wherever your business is, it's going to be somewhere on that spectrum, right? Very easy to very complex. And I think what you got to figure out is, one, you have to do enough of it to really start understanding the systems at scale. Like I think like that's one of the things that most companies fail at is they simply don't do enough business to start building the systems at scale to start bringing other people into it. Because then you bring somebody else into it, they're not running enough repetition, they don't get really good at it. So then it's like, oh, they'll never get as good at it. The other thing too is when you bring somebody else in, they're not going to quite do it like you. They're probably not going to have your level of experience, so they're going to make mistakes. It's part of it. You're probably going to lose some clients sometimes. They're going to piss somebody off, whatever the case may be. It's all part of the process, right? If you are so afraid to bring somebody into your business that at some level is going to screw something up, like you're never going to build an actual business. You're just going to stay self-employed and do the work yourself. So you have to understand that other people are going to mess up. It's going to cost you business. But in the long run, if you find the right people, they will make you exponentially more money and exponentially grow your business over time. You lost maybe a client or two or whatever the case is early on. So that's kind of one part of it. So you gotta find the right kind of people. You got to be able to kind of teach them and show them how to do the thing, and then start building the reps on them getting really good at it. I think the other thing between the CEO and like if we're talking about like the growth leader, the director of growth, the director of growth is like the throttle of the company,
mm,
meaning that they have to understand what's happening in operations. They have to understand what's happening in services. And it's not always just to like grow as fast as you can, because there's some times where you have the opportunities to grow faster, that it's actually smart to slow your growth down a little bit and stabilize in operations, get better at servicing, and then throttle back up. I've seen a lot of companies that, dude, they came out of nowhere, like hit these like just epic levels of success, and then like within like 2 years, you're like, what happened to those people? Where did they go? And they're just completely gone, right? Because they just wanted to throttle 100%. They weren't interested in growing something solid over time, actually building a business, right? And in Berkfield, like that's our main concern is it's growing, it's building something worthwhile, right? That's our tagline. It's building a business that's going to be able to serve you, your family, your team members, your clients over time. It's building something that can last beyond yourself. It's learning how to build something that's based on systems, processes, people,
mm,
and
mm,
not dependent on you. So I think looking at that is that the growth person has to understand the relationship between service operations and growth. They have to have a good relationship with the other leaders. And then as far as the CEO goes, it's having the conversations with the growth person to understand what that role looks like, how to sometimes really put the throttle down and go really hard on growth to be able to catch up to, untapped capacity, versus like, hey, right now we got to kind of slow our growth down. We can't really grow that fast. Is there something that we can do to kind of start building systems around bigger growth later on? But right now we got to pull the throttle back a little bit. And obviously, the growth role is a very it's a role that's based on numbers and accountability, right? So it's the easiest thing typically to track growth activities within a company versus anything else, right? So if you can't break your growth down to numbers that you can track and things that are easy to understand, then you're going to lose. If your growth formula is so complex that you can't really look at it very easily to understand, are we on track or are we off track with growth, you're probably not going to do real well with growth. So I think it's one of those things that between the CEO and the growth leader, really having clear goals, having clear KPIs, meeting very regularly, at least once a week, once every 2 weeks, to kind of go over the numbers, make sure that you're on track, see where you're kind of getting stuck, and helping that person, continue to move forward and get things done.
So, Jurgen, you bring up an interesting point. When we consult with these service-based companies, they say, well, I've got a strong service leader, I've got a strong operator or integrator, I've hired a growth person to do some tasks, and hopefully they'll grow into the growth leader position. If I do that, what am I going to do as CEO? Just have 3 meetings a week and then, sit on my fishing boat for the rest of the time and then entrust my company to these 3 people?
I mean, you could do that if that's your goal, right? But I mean, if that's all you're doing, you're probably not going to retain those people for very long, right?
Yeah.
The role of the CEO is that, one is you're always, playing enough like heads up game where you're looking at what's coming, you're unlocking new opportunities, you're building new high level relationships, you're looking for high level talent. So I think as a great CEO, you're always, no matter where you go, you're meeting people, you're looking for talent, you're recruiting talent to your organization, you're creating opportunity for your current people, and you're creating more runway for the organization. Right. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it that's really big is that you are supporting your key people. So, for us, like your director of services, director of operations, director of growth, as a CEO, your job is to help them, to challenge them, to move big obstacles out of their way, to help them succeed, to develop them, to pour into them. Because the more that you do that, you're pouring into them, they're learning how to pour into their people, and then you're unlocking bigger opportunities for the company, and they're capitalizing on the opportunities, right? So as a CEO, you kind of bring the opportunity together, and then that team steps in and they actualize the opportunity. They see what needs to get done. They build the systems, the processes, they hire the people. And that's the symbiotic relationship, is like, look, I'm going to go create more runway, more opportunity for you. I'm going to pour into you and develop you. You take care of everything that's happening. You build a team that can scale this company. And once you kind of figure out what that rhythm looks like, it can become a really good relationship between you being the CEO and having those key directors.
Cool, thanks. Just one shout out, Joshua Gibson. Thanks for jumping on. If you guys have any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. We'd love to hear from you guys. Dirk, a question that I get asked often is and I know this is a loaded question, but what are the thresholds? If I'm chucking a truck business, at what point do I need a operator or somebody that runs my operations? At what point do I need somebody to take over growth? Because realistically, it only takes me an hour a week. So I know that there isn't a cookie cut answer, but maybe talk about the mindset on how to approach those, as opposed to the traditional mindset of, hey, I'm waiting for these thresholds to make these decisions.
Well, I think if you know what you're after, if I know my goal for this business is to find the right 3 people and empower them to run these divisions so that I can start focusing on other things and helping to create more runway, then it's a different approach as opposed to like I want to figure everything out. And
Mm.
I think a lot of business owners start off by like having the mindset of like they just need to figure everything out, and then it's very hard for them to let go of everything. So I think what you have to focus on here is, we always tell people an operator is the first person that you hire. You hire that person, that administrator that can come in, that can immediately just take admin tasks, operational tasks off of your plate so that you can focus on doing more servicing, right? And if you are chucking a truck and you got a company that you're starting off, you hire an admin, even if it's a part-time admin or a virtual admin or something like that, but immediately you're hiring somebody that can take more off of your plate so that you can start focusing more on generating revenue by doing services, right? Then your next goal is going to be to hire somebody else to help you with services. So now you're helping somebody that's in the field with you. Essentially, they're doing the work, you're mentoring them, you're teaching them, you're training them. And by the way, if you hire the right person in operations and you hire the right person in services, then they can hire the next people, right? It's not about that. If I want to have 15 technicians in my company, I got to go hire 15 technicians. If I do it right, I can hire one person, they go hire 5 or 6 other people. 1 or 2 of those people go out and hire 5 or 6 other people, and now we got 15 people, and we've actually got a series of teams and leaders that can recruit, hire, train, and that's scalable. What's not scalable is for me to go out and hire 15 people that report to me. That is not scalable, because at a certain point that just doesn't work, right? So if I look at this, then I'm still the CEO, even if I'm because that's the thing. If I'm chucking the truck, I'm the CEO, the services person, the operations person, the growth person, the janitor, like everything else, right? So if I can get certain hats and I take them off, and then those people learn that they're going to wear multiple hats, and their job is to take hats off and give to other people. Now your operations person's hiring an assistant, your services person's hiring the next servicing person, and then at a certain ratio that makes sense for your business when it comes to your number of jobs you're doing or number of services you're doing, your average ticket price, what your cost is on the service, your cost of service, cost of goods type thing, then it's going to tell you at what point you can stop doing services and focus on growth. Because a lot of times that's the next kind of evolution is, I'm not in the field doing services anymore, but I'm going out and getting more business. And then if I have the right person in services, they're continuing to hire on that side. If I got the right person ops, they're hiring on that side. Now I replace myself on the growth side, and now I'm the CEO with like the 3 key people that I need, right? So really, that's the fastest journey to building a business. Because by the way, if I want to sell that, it's going to be a lot more sellable if I can go to somebody and say, look, you can buy this company and just step in as a CEO from day one, and you don't have to focus on growth efforts, you don't have to focus on operations, you don't have to focus on marketing or services. You get to focus on unlocking new opportunities or acquiring other companies or whatever it is. Or even if I can replace myself as a CEO and now I'm the owner, I got a CEO that runs my company and those other things. Now I've got a very valuable business, right? Because now it's like I can sell that business to an investor that is going to step in on day one and be the owner. There's already a CEO in place, like all that kind of stuff. And those are the businesses that bring the highest multiples, right? And create the most time freedom. So I think it's all about your mindset, because it's one of those things that it can either take a really long time to do it, or it can happen short. I mean, like, I just sold my shares in one of the companies that I started up 5 years ago. And, my part of the exit was a multi-million-dollar exit because it was structured correctly. It was, we had the right people in place. So there was a lot of value to the business. It wasn't a business that I had to work in, tons of hours. I mean, it was taking 2-3 hours a week of my time to run a business that was doing multiple 7 figures. So a business like that becomes very valuable because it's built correctly and it's structured correctly.
So as we come up at the end of the time, I think just a prelude of one of the things that we want to talk about next week is a lot of businesses, and I had a conversation with a business owner last week, and I had to be very frank, and they said, you know what, I live in this world of pain and I know what I'm supposed to do, but I kind of like it here. I kind of like being this uncomfortable because I feel, and I had to challenge, this client. And I said, you're up against the ceiling, but it's not hurting you enough. There's just not enough pain to create urgency for you to break through, because the reward for you is on this side of the challenge. If this is the reward, your challenge is over here. you need to make a mental decision to put your rewards on the other side of challenges. Otherwise, you're always going to swim in this fish tank. The fish is only going to grow as big as the tank that it lives in, and you're always going to live in this fish tank because the rewards are so easy. Very profitable business, very profitable industry, yet the aspiration is there to get to a higher company, but the pain is not, it's not painful enough for them to break through that ceiling. So maybe just a quick prelude, and then next week we'll dive into that a little bit in detail.
Well, I think one of the things, there's a reason that few people build $10 million businesses, right? I mean, when you take a look at the average business in America has 4 people in it, right? And that is from the tiniest, like, home-based, sell makeup from home or sell, dietary supplements from home type business, all the way to businesses like Amazon that have like hundreds of thousands of people that work for them, right? So, but the average is 4 people. So you can quickly see that most businesses out there are going to be definitely sub $1 million businesses. Like the high majority of businesses are that. And going from 1 million to 5 million, the pie gets very small. Going from 5 million to 10 million, it gets way smaller, right? So, the chances of a business going from startup to 10 million is really, really small. And I mean, the reason is that most people just don't want it that bad, because you got to learn so much. You gotta have so much grit. You gotta really focus on different things, because like, if I want to build $1 million company in America today, I can do that by just really honing my skill and kind of finding some people. I mean, most of the companies that work with us are already $2 to $3 million businesses, right? It's not like building $1 million business today is not that challenging in America. Especially in the service-based thing. I mean, if you show up, you do a good job, you do that for 4 or 5 years, I mean, you could probably build $1 million business, right? If as long as you bring some of the right people around you. But taking a business from 1 million to 5 million is very different. Right now, I have to really start focusing on myself as a leader. I got to start finding the right people. I got to pour into them as leaders. Going from 5 million to 10 million is about really that executive leadership team getting strong, getting really good systems, getting processes, defining services, operations, and growth at a high level, having really clear targets. I mean, now you're building something very systematic. When you start going north of 10 million, now it's like, hey, I got to really learn how to manage my capital. I got to understand my economics at a much higher level. And again, like, I need to upgrade my executive leadership team. I got to grow as a CEO. So what happens is, along the journey, it's not about just like the technical stuff you do. It's about how much you're pouring into yourself, how much you're pouring into your people, how much you're growing, and how much you're starting to succeed through people, systems, and processes, right? Technology, like software, like whatever it is. But it's not about just like the skill of doing the thing anymore. It's about now scaling the thing, and that's a very different approach. So I think it's something that you got to want bad enough, because if there's a lot of people that they get to a certain level and it's like, hey man, I'm not working that much. I mean, we got multiple clients that work sub 10 hours a week that are probably taking home $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 a year, right? So it's one of those things that's not a bad gig, man. I mean, like, that's really not a bad gig. So it's like, some people are like, I don't want to screw that up, because I don't want to start working all the time and making less money, right? But I mean, it's definitely, it takes a commitment to take it to the next level. And sometimes you got to work more for a season. Sometimes you got to make less money for a season. But you got to want it bad enough to go to the next level.
So we would love to connect with you guys. We're gonna post a contact email address where we'd love, if you guys want to reach out to us, we'd gladly offer you guys an hour of our time to sit in a strategy session with one of us, talk through your business, see where you are. One of the interesting things I just want to circle back to as we end this, Dirk, is you were mentioning 1 million, 2.5, 5 million, 10 million. And a lot of people say, well, I like what you're saying, and I'll get to it when I want to grow, or I'm approaching that 10 million mark, or I'm approaching that 5 million mark. And what a lot of service-based companies omit to do is you have to build the structure correct today. We've got case study after case study of businesses that have grown, and then they've had to deconstruct themselves either into a profitable economic model, or into a correct structure, or into reducing the services that they offer, all that type of stuff, because they kind of said, well, I'll get the right people, I'll get the right leadership, I'll get the right systems and structures in place when I'm that big. and it's the be do have. I have to do it today. I have to be the right person today. I have to be the service leader today in order to have the $5 million business. It's not I will have the $5 million business and then I will get the correct leader.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that the sooner you start with the right kind of playbook and the right kind of support, the easier it's going to be there. Because you can't build a $10 million business if you can't build a five, and you can't build a five, you can't build a 2 million, you can't build, it's like, so if, and unfortunately, again, most of the clients who work with are, million to $3 million businesses, because a lot of times when you go talk to somebody that's got a $750,000 business, they're still on the way up and they haven't hit, the ceiling. They haven't like figured out that they're going to need help. They just assume that they're just going to be able to get there. And it's not until they start like failing and start having some really rough times, they're like, okay, maybe it's worth investing in somebody kind of showing me the path. And I mean, we've got, like you said, we got the proven track record. We've helped, a lot of businesses now go from 1 to 5, 5 to 10, and 10 plus. I mean, our biggest client now is like $60 million, right? So it's when you start having more of a playbook and a proven track record of like, hey, here's what you need to do at these stages. And it's something that we are constantly studying and learning, and we share. Like as soon as we learn, we immediately turn around and we share it with our clients. But it just makes it easier to do when you're in an environment where you can connect with other people that are doing it, sharing, and that's, I think, where the magic happens, is having access to that data, having access to the community, like all that kind of stuff. And whether it's us or somebody else, like if you're on this business journey, like get around people that are doing it. Like don't isolate yourself. And there's a lot of people that, by the time they build a $2 million business, $3 million business, they're kind of at the top of like all of their friends and family and success and all that kind of stuff. They feel isolated. They don't know what to do. So that doesn't serve you. Get around people that are on that journey, which you'll learn like everybody is struggling. Everybody is failing all the time. It feels messy for everybody all the time. There's no such thing as like, $2, $3, $4 million business has got it all figured out, that's growing and it's got zero pain. Like everybody has challenges and trying to figure stuff out. So that's a good place. It's just a good realization to have as well.
Yeah. And I mean, people often think that the franchise model is going to resolve all of that. I just need to apply myself and some money and some effort, and I've got the perfect formula. And I mean, there's a lot of franchise institutions that you'll get one franchise office that does really well and another one that doesn't. And it's not about having the document or that type of stuff. So thanks, Dirk. Thanks for being on Pivot Ready Live today. I know that you've quite a hectic schedule, but it's always fun for us to spend time with you. We'll be back next week, same time, same place. We would love to get your comments. If you guys want to reach out to us again, the email address will pop up on the screen. If you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us. Thank you guys for being here. Dirk, thank you. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, great job, Wesley. Thank you so much, man.